Dust rose like faded memories as the wind rolled over the flat stretch of Arizona Badlands, pressing against sunburnt soil and the weather-beaten boards of Elias Shaw's modest farmstead. The house was a relic from a time when people still believed in planting roots and reaping honest harvests. Now it stood like an island surrounded by endless dunes, the last stubborn holdout against the slow march of desertification. Elias stood under the rusted tin awning of his porch, sweat beading along his brow despite the dying sun casting long, cool shadows across the cracked earth. His boots were caked in red dirt, his shirt streaked with dust and dried grease. A wide-brimmed hat shadowed the deep lines etched into his face, each one carved by droughts, broken machinery, and the weight of solitude. He sipped from a metal cup filled with water pulled from his private well, the last reliable source for 20 miles. He didn't drink much, not because he couldn't, but because water was respect. A man didn't hoard respect. He just used what he needed. The world had changed too fast for him to keep up. 10 years ago, he might have laughed at the idea of alien diplomacy, spaceports in orbit, and interspecies trade unions. Now the sky flickered nightly with silent, glittering streaks, shuttles and transports, and things with names he'd stopped trying to pronounce. Still, none of it reached his farm. The spaceport was over 300 miles away. Visitors never came this far out into nothing. The government had offered to buy his land more than once, always with pretty words about progress and preservation. But Elias Shaw didn't care for cities, laws, or progress. He cared for his land, his cattle, and the rusted tractor that coughed to life only when threatened. So, when the sky tore open that evening, when the stars themselves seemed to blink and something fell like fire wrapped in silence, Elias narrowed his eyes and spat into the dirt. He finished his water. He listened, and then he heard it. A low humming, unnatural and wrong, rolled over the ridge beyond the eastern windbreak. The cattle were silent. Even the wind hesitated, as if holding its breath. He grabbed his old rifle, not because he wanted to shoot anything, but because carrying it made him feel like the world still made sense. It didn't take long to reach the ridge. His boots crunched softly over parched grass as he crested the hill, the horizon glowing dimly red-orange where the object had landed or crashed. Smoke slithered up into the sky, tinged with a strange green hue. He moved carefully, stepping around brittle sagebrush and scorched rocks, until he saw it. A ship, not a big one, maybe 20 feet long, sleek, and shaped like a beetle's shell. It had slammed into the earth at an angle, gouging a shallow trench into the dry soil. Sparks sputtered from its broken undercarriage. Panels were bent, charred, and twisted. One of the landing struts looked like it had tried, and failed to deploy. Elias took a step forward, cautiously. That's when the door opened. Not all the way, just enough to make a hiss and release a puff of gray steam into the cooling air. A voice crackled from within, garbled, metallic, and high-pitched. Elias lowered the rifle. "Well now," he murmured. "Ain't this something?" Out stumbled 3 figures. They were small, child-sized, really, wrapped in strange clothing that shimmered slightly in the fading light. Their skin was pale blue, like porcelain washed in moonlight, and their eyes were oversized, glossy black. 2 of them helped the third, who limped heavily and made a faint whimpering noise with every step. They saw him, froze. Elias slowly raised a hand. "Easy now. I ain't fixin' to harm y'all." The tallest one blinked and chittered rapidly at the others in a language Elias didn't recognize. Then it looked at him again and reached out, tiny fingers shaking. He didn't need a translator to know they were scared. Their ship was busted. Their friend was hurt. And whatever they were, they didn't belong out here in the middle of nowhere, with only jackrabbits and dust storms for neighbors. Elias sighed, adjusted his grip on the rifle, and gestured toward the hill. "Come on, then. Ain't safe sitting out in the open like this." They hesitated, but survival trumped fear. Slowly they followed. He brought them back to the house, cleared the table, gave them water, watched them stare at it for a full minute before daring to drink, gave them bread and the last of the stew he'd made that morning, which they devoured like starved things. The injured one whimpered again, clutching its side. Elias rummaged through his cabinet for the old first aid kit. Ain't much, but I'll do what I can. They watched him work with quiet fascination. He cleaned the wound, a nasty gash on its side, then wrapped it as best he could in gauze. No bleeding, though. No blood at all. Just a clear, sap-like fluid that smelled faintly of citrus and ozone. Afterward, the aliens sat together on the floor by the hearth, shivering under a faded quilt. The room was quiet save for the soft tick of the clock on the mantel. Elias poured himself another cup of water, sat back down at the table, and stared at them. "Well, what now?" he muttered. He didn't expect an answer. So when the one he'd taken for the leader stood, bowed awkwardly, and walked toward the table, then placed a small, glowing disc in front of him. He blinked. The disc shimmered, rose into the air, and unfolded like paper made of light. A hologram appeared. It showed an emblem, a golden spiral with 4 stars orbiting it, then a face. Human-like, stern, clad in robes of deep green and gold. The voice spoke in near-perfect English. "This is an automated diplomatic summons. You, Elias Shaw of Terran Registry, are requested to appear before the Unified Tribunal of Galactic Accord as witness to unauthorized planetary contact. Refusal to comply will be considered obstruction of interspecies law. Estimated retrieval, 3.2 standard hours." The image disappeared. Elias stared at the empty air. Now what in God's good hell does that mean? Outside, the wind howled again, but it sounded different this time, like something was coming. Something big. The storm didn't come with rain. It came with light. Elias sat stock still as the horizon flared with a white-blue pulse that lit the sky brighter than lightning. The wind died abruptly, and the silence that followed was the kind that pressed against the chest like a weight, full of waiting and warning. He rose from his chair slowly, the legs scraping against the wooden floor. The 3 aliens huddled tighter by the fireplace, their large black eyes reflecting the strobing light outside the windows. The injured one whimpered again, but the others didn't move. They were listening. Another pulse came, closer, brighter. He stepped out onto the porch, boots crunching gravel. It hovered above the farm mesa. Not a shuttle, not a drone. This was something else entirely. A ship the size of a small town floated less than a mile from his farm, casting its long triangular shadow over the red soil. Its underbelly glowed with shifting glyphs, moving like ink in water. No visible engines, no wings, no sound. Elias could feel it in his molars. He turned to go back inside when the disc on his table lit up again. "Prepare for transport," it said, and without warning, the world around him warped. It didn't feel like teleportation. It felt like being snapped through a threadbare hole in reality, yanked backward while the world inverted. A second later, his boots struck solid metal flooring, and he staggered, barely catching himself. The air was cooler, filtered, scented faintly of copper and ozone. Elias looked up. He stood in a circular chamber, walls of dark glass and steel, glowing panels scrolling unreadable alien text. The air shimmered with projected screens, images of planets, species, treaties, and other things far beyond his understanding. In front of him stood a creature that made his rifle back home feel about as useful as a toothpick. Tall, nearly 7 feet, clad in robes of dark green with golden accents, just like the hologram. Its skin was like smooth stone, mottled with faint, glowing veins of violet. Its face was humanoid, but more refined, ageless and cold. 2 more aliens flanked it, one with crystalline armor and multiple arms, the other insectoid with a wide array of twitching mandibles and glowing compound eyes. Both radiated authority. Danger. The robed figure stepped forward. "Elias Shaw of Earth. Welcome to the judgment deck of Tribunal Vessel Orentval. I am Magistrate Valen of the Galactic Accord." Elias stared for a moment. "I wasn't expecting such a warm welcome. You are here as a witness to an unsanctioned planetary intrusion by a classified species under Accord protection. Your involvement has legal consequences." "You mean them 3 little fellas I helped?" "They are not little fellas. They are refugees of the Polari Displacement Protocol. Their movement is strictly monitored. You intervened. I gave him water. One was bleeding. What was I supposed to do? Let him die in the dirt. The insectoid chittered harshly. The one in armor tilted its head and said in a low, translated tone, "Intent is not the concern. Protocol is." The magistrate raised a hand. "We will determine intent in due process. For now, you are required to give testimony." Testimony about what? They crashed. I helped. That's the long and short of it. The chamber dimmed. A section of the wall turned translucent, revealing a massive view of space and Earth, hovering below like a pale blue marble in a velvet sea. Humanity is still under probationary classification, not yet fully recognized as a mature interstellar species. Your laws are not yet harmonized with Accord statutes. However, acts of interspecies engagement, especially harboring fugitive species, carry immediate implications. Elias frowned. Fugitive? They didn't seem like runaways. They were scared. One was hurt bad. The armored alien tapped its forearm. A holographic image appeared in the air. His farm, the broken ship, the three small beings wrapped in his quilts. Then another image, one Elias didn't expect. A monstrous vessel, spiked, black, and burning with orange light. It loomed in orbit, emerging from shadow like a hunting beast. The magistrate's voice was low. That is the reason they ran. The Ravener Syndicate. Illegal weapon smugglers, slavers, and gene thieves. They claimed the Polari young as escaped property. Property? Elias growled. They're kids. To them, it is legal ownership. The Accord does not recognize such claims, but open conflict over an unclassified world, such as Earth, would jeopardize interstellar relations. So you're saying, because I gave him shelter, I might have started a war? The insectoid hissed. You may have invited one. The tension in the room rose like water behind a cracking dam. Elias tried to process it. 3 kids running from monsters, and now he was in the middle of a cosmic tug-of-war. Where are they now? He asked. The kids. Are they safe? They are currently in holding aboard this vessel, said the magistrate. We must determine their future before making formal decisions. Their presence on your planet triggered multiple alerts. Elias crossed his arms. You can't send them back to those bastards. Such outcomes are still being evaluated. I ain't a diplomat, but I've seen what a cage looks like. I ain't letting them go back. The armored alien took a step forward. That is not your decision. The chamber lights flickered. Then the ship shuddered. A warning tone pulsed overhead. Text scrolled across the upper screens in blood-red glyphs. The magistrate's comm cracked. Unscheduled contact. Ravener's signature detected. Elias's stomach dropped. They followed the kids, didn't they? They're not yet in range, but they will be within the hour. The armored alien's voice deepened. We must begin lockdown. Shields are at 30%. They're coming for them, Elias said. And for me. Yes, the magistrate said. And for Earth. Then we stop him. Stop them. The insectoid buzzed in disbelief. Their vessel is a siege-class predator with weaponry older than your civilization. You are a farmer. I don't care if they're 10 stories tall and shoot lightning from their teeth, Elias growled. Those kids didn't hurt nobody. You can have your fancy courts. I'll protect them the way any good man would. The magistrate stared at him, unreadable, then turned to the armored one. Activate emergency tribunal protocol. Inform the Accord that Elias Shaw is requesting protectorate representation status under Human Exceptional Clause 12b. What does that mean? Elias asked. It means the magistrate said that you are being granted temporary diplomatic authority. You are now the formal guardian of the refugees. Elias blinked. Wait, what? A metallic collar appeared in the air, hovering, then snapped around his wrist like a cuff. It glowed faintly blue. You will defend your claim, before the tribunal, and perhaps on the battlefield. A rumble passed through the deck. The lights shifted red. A klaxon echoed deeper in the ship. The Ravener ship had arrived, and they weren't here to talk. The Ravener warship hung like a predator above the tribunal vessel, eclipsing distant starlight with a hull forged from centuries of conquest. Its surface shimmered with plasma grids, weapon batteries, and cruelly sharp ridges that pulsed with orange heat. Elias had never seen anything so horrifying, so impossibly vast. It made Earth's entire moon fleet look like a pile of junkyard drones. The Tribunal ship shivered again. Inside the chamber, the magistrate's voice took on a sharper, clipped cadence. Shields holding at 26%. Inform Accord Command. Delay engagement protocols until Tribunal verdict is reached. The armored alien moved swiftly, shouting orders in a language that sounded like grinding metal and echoing bells. Lights dimmed to emergency red. Holographic tactical maps formed in the air. One of the Tribunal ship, another of the Ravener beast. Elias stood frozen, cuff glowing faintly at his wrist. The Polari children, those tiny, wide-eyed beings who had been sleeping beside his hearth only hours ago, were now the spark in a powder keg that could blow Earth off the galactic map. He hadn't signed up for this. Didn't ask to be the face of humanity in a court that judged across galaxies. But then he heard them, faint sobs, a high-pitched series of clicks from the corridor outside the chamber. He turned sharply. The door opened. 2 guards led the 3 Polari in. The smallest limped still, wrapped in the same gauze he'd placed on its side. The leader of the trio, taller, with tiny antenna-like ridges above its eyes, broke from the guards and rushed forward. Elias, it said, surprisingly clearly, you came. He knelt instinctively, arms out, and the child flung itself into his chest. The other 2 followed, all trembling, their bodies so light they barely pressed against him. He looked up at the magistrate. They don't belong to the Ravener. That is not yet proven. They ain't weapons, or spies, or whatever the hell that monster out there says they are. They're just scared. A soft chime interrupted him. A small drone zipped into the chamber and projected a new hologram. The Ravener. Elias squinted at the image. It wasn't a face, not truly, just a shifting shape of metal and flame. But the voice was ice sliding down a man's spine. Return our assets. You have 3 of them. They are tagged, registered, engineered. Return them, or we will reduce your vessel to floating slag and retrieve them from the debris. They're not assets, Elias growled. They're kids. You misunderstand. They are ours. Crafted for linguistic infiltration, bioadaptation, and neural override technology. You think them lost children. We know them as prototypes. Our property. The magistrate raised a hand. You will not fire upon a tribunal vessel while formal claim is contested under Accord law. Your laws are dust. The Accord cannot stop what is coming. The transmission cut. The Ravener ship began to charge its forward cannons. Elias turned to the magistrate. They're serious. Yes, the magistrate said calmly. They always are. What happens if you lose shields? We burn. And so does your planet. Elias looked down at the Polari. Can't you hide them? Smuggle them somewhere. The insectoid answered bitterly. There is nowhere far enough. Once the Ravener imprint a biosignature, they could trace it to the ends of the void. Elias's hand curled into a fist. Then came the twist. The injured Polari child stepped forward, trembling. It touched the floor panel gently, and the glowing blue lines lit beneath its fingers. A new hologram unfolded in the air, complex strands of light forming a genome sequence. It shifted, rotated, and then split. 2 DNA sequences, one from the Ravener databanks and one from the child. They weren't a perfect match, not even close. The magistrate stepped forward, startled. What is this? The child looked up. We were taken, not made. Our blood is not Ravener. It is shared. Shared. The Polari placed one tiny hand on Elias's arm. And in that instant, Elias felt it. Not a voice in his head, not exactly, but a presence. A memory. A vision. A prison ship filled with children. Experiments. Needles. Machines pulling thoughts from screaming minds. 3 of them, barely conscious, escaping into a service duct, crawling through vents, hiding in refused chutes, finding a stolen scout ship, fleeing, not property, survivors. Elias jerked back, heart pounding. They're not Ravener tech. They were taken. They've got human DNA, spliced. The magistrate turned to a console. We'll verify the scan. No time, Elias barked. Look at him. They feel. They chose to run. The armored alien paced. If what he says is true, the Ravener created a hybrid that would breach at least 6 interstellar accords. It'd be grounds for total war, the magistrate said grimly. Another tremor rocked the ship. The Ravener's cannon was nearly charged. Suddenly, the child that had shown the memories spoke again, this time louder. They will kill us all, unless we choose. Choose what? Elias asked. The child stepped into the center of the chamber and began to glow, faintly at first, then brilliantly. Energy radiated from its small form, lifting it gently into the air. Polari adapt. Our mind connect. We saw what humans feel. We chose that. Elias's throat tightened. You chose humanity? The magistrate whispered, impossible. The insectoid hissed. They cannot cross genetic allegiance on will alone. And yet, another pulse of energy. The injured Polari lifted a hand and pressed it against Elias's heart. You gave us water, shelter, kindness. We remembered that more than the pain. If we are to survive, we must become what helped us. The cuff on Elias's wrist surged with light. Symbols appeared above it, aligning, matching the Polari energy signature. The magistrate's eyes widened. They're triggering imprint fusion, binding their genetic allegiance to you, to Earth. They're not just refugees anymore, Elias said slowly. They're citizens. The deck shuddered again. The Ravener warships' main cannon finished charging. The Tribunal ship braced for impact. The magistrate turned sharply. Elias Shaw, as guardian, you may invoke one defensive clause. Only one. Yes. Choose wisely. Elias looked at the children, then at the hologram of Earth glowing blue below, and made his choice. I invoke immediate emergency sovereignty clause under Article 9, human defensive override. Everyone in the chamber turned. That clause has never been invoked, the armored alien said. Elias spat in the corner. Well, it's a damn good day for firsts. The magistrate placed a hand over a glyph. Override granted. Shield frequency adjusted. Power rerouted. The light in the chamber turned white hot. Then, everything went dark. The darkness lasted less than a second. But in that single heartbeat, the Orient shifted from a diplomatic cruiser to something else entirely. The emergency sovereignty clause, human defensive override, Article 9, was a relic. Obscure, unused, buried in a Accord code for hundreds of years. Designed for only one type of being. A species too unpredictable to trust with full galactic access. But too stubborn to ever be fully controlled. The lights returned. Dim, crimson. Every screen and control panel on the Tribunal ship shifted to Terran display format. English letters. Analog dials. Glyphs turned to digits. Alien interfaces melting into mechanical ones that matched Elias's homegrown sensibilities. When the hell? Elias whispered. The Tribunal's control room had adapted to him. Harmonic reconfiguration complete. A new voice said overhead. Female, steady, with a slight southern twang. Welcome, Elias Shaw. Sovereign directive acknowledged. Defensive control is now bound to your command authorization. The magistrate blinked. The override didn't just invoke protection. It hijacked the vessel. The armored alien growled. This is madness. Not madness, Elias muttered, flexing his fingers. Just human problem solving. He took a step toward the center of the chamber. The Polari children followed silently, their bodies still glowing faintly with the imprint energy. The holographic display shifted, now focused fully on the Ravener ship. Incoming fire detected. 30 seconds to impact. The voice echoed again, warmer now, like an old friend ready to ride or die. Would you like to return fire, Mr. Shaw? Elias swallowed. We got weapons? Oh, honey, the ship replied. We've got surprises. The magistrate looked to him sharply. You are authorized only to defend. Do not escalate. I ain't here to start a war, Elias said. But if they fire first, I ain't letting Earth take the hit. He reached toward the console, transformed now into a holographic control rig resembling a combine's stick shift crossed with a fighter jet's yoke. His farmer's hands, strong, calloused, scarred, settled naturally on the controls. On screen, the Ravener vessel loomed ever closer. Its cannon glowed like the heart of a star. Impact in 15 seconds, the ship's AI said. Divert all shield energy to front array, Elias ordered. Double layer. If that thing hits, we want to survive the greeting. Acknowledged. The ship groaned as systems rerouted. Plasma coils surged. The hull screamed with electromagnetic tension. Elias watched the countdown tick. 10, 9, 8. The Polari held hands behind him. 3, 2, 1. The Ravener fired. The beam that came was not light. It was annihilation. A lance of entropy, molten and black, tearing through space like a god's whip. It struck the Tribunal ship's shields dead center. And time slowed. Elias felt the heat, the weight, the fury of it. But the override held. The forward shields pulsed once, twice, then held fast with a soundless, blinding flash that tore space into fractured prisms. Elias grunted as the force pushed back against his chest like a 1,000-pound bull. But they survived. The Ravener ship recoiled slightly. Surprised. Not used to resistance. Shields at 68%, the AI reported. No hull breach. You're still standing, cowboy. Elias exhaled. Now it's our turn. Please specify retaliation protocol. The magistrate raised a hand. Elias, this is the moment. If you fire, we may lose the Accord's neutrality. You'll turn Earth from observer to combatant. Elias looked at the children, then out the viewport, where Earth sat quiet and blue, fragile against the backdrop of war, and then at the thing that dared threaten it. Open comms, Elias said. A beat. Then the projection of the Ravener commander filled the chamber again. I gave you a chance, Elias said. You fired first. You tried to kill me. You tried to kill them. They are ours. No, they chose me. They chose humanity. And that means they're under our protection now. The Ravener's projection shifted, distorting with rage. You will die screaming, ape. You and your mud world will burn. Elias didn't flinch. Not today. He killed the channel with a swipe, then looked at the AI. Target their cannon. Disable. Don't destroy the ship, unless they give us no choice. Copy that. Retaliation sequence primed. Launching in 3. The floor thrummed. 2. The Polari children joined hands again, humming softly. 1. The Tribunal ship launched its retaliation, but it didn't come in the form of lasers or missiles. It came as a pulse, sonic, gravitational, and quantum. A shockwave that spiraled like a helix through space, invisible to the eye, but devastating to systems unprepared for it. It hit the Ravener vessel with the force of an extinction event, without killing anyone. The enemy ship buckled. Lights failed. Systems fried. The weapon arrays went dark. And then, slowly, the ship began to list in space. No longer a hunter, but prey. They're dead in the water, the AI said. The magistrate was silent for several seconds. You used a non-lethal frequency. EMP displacement tailored to their ship's architecture. How did your people? We didn't build it, Elias said. But the override did. That technology has no precedent. Then maybe it's time you took humans more seriously. Another console beeped. Accord ships, dozens of them, dropped out of FTL behind the Tribunal vessel. Their sleek hulls and shimmering banners lit the sky with every color of the cosmos. Backup had arrived. The magistrate's gaze softened. You save your world, Elias Shaw. And theirs. The Tribunal vessel powered down from battle mode, restoring its peaceful neutrality. The override dissolved slowly from the walls, returning the architecture to its original alien flow. The AI whispered its last message into Elias's ear. Good job, farmer. He looked down at the Polari children, now visibly changed. Their eyes more human, skin slightly warmer in hue. They had shifted again, blending more with him, echoing his essence. You sure you want this? He asked softly. It's a hard road. The lead child nodded. You gave us something the Ravener never understood. A choice. The magistrate stepped forward. The Accord must still deliberate, but your claim of protectorate status under sovereign override is valid. They are now under your guardianship. Earth's record will be amended. Elias sighed. Just want them to be safe. That's all. He looked out the window one last time, at the stars. So quiet, so vast, so fragile. And for the first time in his life, Elias Shaw realized something deep in his bones. He wasn't just a farmer anymore. He was a shield. The Tribunal ship drifted peacefully through space once more, like a courtroom reborn after fire. The threat was over, for now. The Ravener warship had been secured, its systems disabled, and its crew taken into neutral custody by incoming Accord enforcers. Tension had evaporated like mist under sunlight, but Elias knew the scars left behind wouldn't fade so easily. The chamber was quiet. No alarms, no angry voices, just the low hum of functioning systems and the distant chatter of relief among the Accord delegates who had arrived in force. Elias stood alone at the observation port, watching Earth turn slowly beneath them. It looked small from up here, delicate, too quiet, maybe for the chaos it had narrowly avoided. You should rest, the magistrate said, stepping beside him. Elias didn't turn. I will, but not yet. Your actions today prevented war, not only for Earth, but for us all. The Ravener will be sanctioned. The Tribunal will formally charge them with the genetic abduction of sentience. And your world has earned a place in the Accord far beyond observer status. I didn't ask for any of this, Elias said, voice flat. But you rose to meet it anyway. That's the difference. He turned now, finally facing the magistrate fully. What happens to them? He asked, nodding toward the Polari children, sitting quietly on a bench nearby, talking to an Accord medical envoy. Their bodies were still shifting, subtly, but there was stability now, confidence, even peace. They've been declared sapient under Accord law, the magistrate answered, with full rights. And thanks to your invocation, Earth has legal custody of them. They will be protected. Elias rubbed the back of his neck. And me, you, Elias Shaw, have been named Earth's first Accord guardian, provisional diplomat, defender of the protected. He laughed, just once deep and tired. I grow beans and mend tractors. The magistrate tilted its armored head. You also faced down an interstellar war engine and made it blink. That tends to revise resumes. Elias stepped away from the window. I don't want to meddle. Just want them to grow up free, to live without fear. The magistrate gestured subtly. Then speak to them. Elias crossed the room, kneeling as he reached the bench. You three okay? The lead child, the one with the soft green eyes and silver crest, nodded. Better than we've ever been. You didn't let them take us. Not on my watch, Elias said gruffly. The second one, the quiet one with a still healing leg, leaned forward. Can we go to Earth? With you. He hesitated, then nodded. If you're sure. We want to learn what kindness is, what it means to be free. Elias's throat tightened. Then yeah, you're coming home with me. Will people be afraid of us? Maybe, he admitted. But folks in my town are decent once they get used to things. And if anyone gives you trouble, he cracked a smile. You let me handle it. The smallest of them reached forward and wrapped its tiny, four-fingered hand around his. We chose you. We still choose you. They held that moment, silent but full of promise. The children had changed, not just in form, but in spirit. There was a light behind their eyes now. Not fear, hope. When Elias stood again, the magistrate was waiting with a holographic tablet. Sign here to finalize your new Accord status and custody registration. Can I still go back to my farm? Absolutely, but you might want to upgrade your fence. Elias chuckled and pressed his thumb to the glowing symbol. The chamber lights flickered once. Confirmation. It's done, the magistrate said. Earth now holds protective status over the Polari 3. You will be their custodian and their advocate. From this moment forward, you speak not just as a Terran, but as something more. Elias's smile faded into a thoughtful frown. Something more, huh? Yes. He stared at his reflection in the polished floor. Just a man in flannel and boots. Dirt still under his nails. A piece of hay stuck behind his ear. But maybe, just maybe, that was enough. A low beep sounded across the room. The Accord transport docked with the Tribunal ship, its sleek hull aligned with the airlock. "Time to go," Elias said softly. The children stood, excited and nervous, clustered close to him. As the door opened, a gentle wind swept in, recycled air, but fresh with meaning. Elias stepped through first, boots clunking on the ramp. The Polari followed, clutching his arms and sleeves, eyes wide at the corridor's bright lights. Ahead waited a new life, not just for them, for all of them. 3 weeks later, Elias leaned against the fence post outside his house, chewing on a stalk of grass. The sun had just started dipping behind the wheat fields, casting long golden shadows across the land. The air smelled like summer, fresh dirt, diesel, honeysuckle. Behind him, the screen door creaked open. The 3 Polari children came bounding out, now dressed in a strange hybrid of jeans, tunics, and light adaptive wraps. They looked more human with each day, but their eyes still shimmered faintly in the twilight. "Dinner's almost ready," the smallest called. "Tell Mama Gray to hold the biscuits," Elias said, smiling. That was what the kids had taken to calling his ancient AI cookbot, now repurposed to make dumplings and toast. They chased each other across the yard, laughing, laughing. Elias watched them, heart full in a way he'd never expected. Not everything was perfect. The Accord had sent observers. Journalists had begged for interviews. Politicians wanted statements. But here, on this stretch of Kansas land, it was just a man and his 3 alien kids. A family. The wind rustled the wheat. Elias looked up at the stars beginning to twinkle. Up there, the Ravener would return someday. Maybe not tomorrow. Maybe not even next year. But eventually, the fight would come again. Stronger. Smarter. With new weapons. New faces. But when it did, humanity wouldn't be caught off guard. Not again. They'd have allies. They'd have him. And this time, they'd be ready. He pulled the worn hat down over his brow and headed inside. Biscuits were waiting. Decades passed. Then centuries. And though the Tribunal's courtroom no longer floated in low orbit around Earth, and the fields of Kansas had long since turned to glass in memory, the story of Elias Shaw, the farmer, the protector, the spark, refused to die. Not in the Accord archives, not in the Ravener's curses, and certainly not in the voices of those who came after. In time, entire civilizations would claim they had known him, that they had descended from the Polari 3, or stood guard as farm gate, or even served biscuits from the same robot chef. None of it could be proven, but none of it could be disproven either, and that was the real power of a myth. In the 100th year after the Sovereign Override event, a galactic assembly convened, not in war, but in remembrance. Earth had become more than an observer by then. It had become a proving ground. The children Elias had raised, once frightened, hunted things, had grown into something far greater. They became diplomats, historians, unifiers. They founded the Shaw Accord, a compact between species who refused to bow to conquest. A coalition born not of military strength, but of shared wounds, of choice, of rebellion. It spread like fire through dry systems, igniting pockets of resistance against ancient powers. And in every sector, in every hidden corner of colonized space, the phrase appeared. It started with a farmer. No name, just a man, with dirt under his fingernails, kindness in his bones, and a backbone that wouldn't bend even under the weight of empires. On the Ravener homeworld, the fallout took longer to unfold. The humiliation of the Tribunal ship should have sparked revenge. It should have awakened a new wave of terror, a war that would burn across the stars. But something else happened instead. When the Ravener ship had been disabled, its transmission logs had been captured, its mission made public. Entire races saw for the first time what had truly happened. The kidnapping of hybrid children, the attempted assassination of a protector, the contempt for free choice. The backlash was planetary. Internal revolts sparked across Ravener-controlled worlds. Slave species rose up. Colonized vassals cut ties. And deep within the Ravener's own ruling caste, a fissure formed. A quiet, sharp question emerged. What if the humans were not weak? What if they were not primitive? What if they were, right? The whisper spread. Rebellion began. not with plasma rifles or fleets, but with a single question etched into an underground wall on a mining moon. Would the farmer have bowed? The answer was written in blood. No. The Accord eventually formalized the Sovereign Override Clause as a codified right, the Shaw Protocol. Any species, no matter how small, could invoke protection under it, so long as a human accepted responsibility. And they did. Humans became more than participants. They became chosen. At first it was rare, a desperate family on a gas moon invoking a local Terran diplomat to protect them from indenture. A small tribe of cephalopod artists seeking shelter from slaver guild under an Earth governor. Then it became widespread. Alien children would travel parsecs just to reach a Terran colony, hoping to be seen, recognized, defended. Because humans had proven one thing no other species ever had. They didn't protect for glory. They didn't fight for conquest. They stood up because someone had to. A statue stands now where Elias's farm once did. Not a monument of gold, nor shining crystal. Just a man, in overalls, holding the hands of 3 children not quite human. He's looking up, not at a spaceship or a god or a throne, but at the sky. Watching, waiting. Above it, etched into the stone, is the first thing Elias ever said to the Polari. Well, shoot, let's get you some water. Beneath it, another phrase, carved later by someone unknown. That's when the stars change forever. But not all stories end in peace. Far beyond the Accord's reach, in the silent corners of the void, something else had awakened during the override. A presence. Old. Hungry. Watching. Not a ravener. Not a species at all. It had been there long before the Accord. Before the Tribunal. Before even the Ravener Empire. Dormant. Buried in the subspace architecture of the stars. The override had touched it. The defiance of Elias Shaw had stirred it. And now it waited. Waited for the moment when the myth would grow too bright. Waited to test the claim. Would humanity kneel? But for now, the galaxy lived under a fragile peace. Built not on treaties, but trust. Not on warships, but stories. In the halls of the Polari Academy, founded by the 3 who had once clung to a man with calloused hands, children of every race are taught that kindness is an act of revolution, and that standing firm in the face of tyranny isn't foolish. It's human. And though no one can say where Elias Shaw is buried, if he ever died at all, pilgrims still walk the Kansas crater. They bring soil, seeds, water, and they whisper a promise into the dust. We don't stop. Centuries passed, empires rose and fell, but one phrase remained whispered among the stars. Words spoken in defiance, in hope, in unbreakable will. Human, don't stop.